You're back with Colorado and Company. Young girls everywhere flip through the pages of glossy magazines with the dream of becoming superstars. But at what price?
Girl in the Mirror is a novel by Denver author John Parisi. It tells the story of a girl from the Midwest who finds herself on the top of the Hollywood A-list, and Denver readers are just eating it up. John Parisi joins us now. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks.
Tell us a bit about Girl in the Mirror. Tell us about your novel.
Well, the primary concept of the book is this whole contrast between power and dignity, and I think it's a really interesting human struggle, and you can relate that to somebody who has corporate aspirations, you can relate it to relationships, or you can relate it to somebody who's trying to reach the top of the Hollywood A-list. And the reason I chose Hollywood as a backdrop for the story is because that's an extreme version of power, to have that kind of global fame and recognition and notoriety and to be envied by millions everywhere. Well, what happens if there's a character who can tap into that world but can be exploited by it, and what happens if the small town values she's raised with are the complete opposite of the world of glitz and glam that she aspires to? How is she going to reconcile black and white and night and day? And it kind of took on a life of its own after that.
It's a great book, and you know, just to encourage younger girls to read this book, because as we mentioned, flipping through the magazines, everybody wants to look like Jennifer Aniston.
Right.
They don't
Jennifer
realize what
Aniston
goes on and what they have to give up. But the title, I think, is really interesting. Girl in the Mirror. How did you come up with that?
Well, it hints at, you know, how image conscious our society is. And when you look at the media and you think about all the glamorous beauties you see out there, I mean, everyone looks like an airbrushed version of Barbie and Ken. You know, it's in a ridiculous extreme of beauty, but so many of us are obsessed with that kind of beauty. And it really talks about, you know, what are you willing to sacrifice to tap into that world? You know, what's more important to you? Is it what you're raised to believe in, or is it how other people see you and how other people perceive you?
Right.
So now you've mentioned, you know, struggling with dignity and values in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Well, what gave me the idea for the story, I was talking about the conflict between power and dignity, and Hollywood is so transitory and so very much based on the here and now and what's hot and what's cool and what's hip. So what happens when, you know, mom and dad are telling you, be true to yourself and don't let yourself be compromised, and the bright lights are shining in your face and they're saying, you know, you can reach the top and you can be on magazines and billboards across the world, you know?
Right.
How do you juxtapose the two?
But how do you think that's affecting our society today?
Well, it's just, you know, I don't want to sound cynical, but in many cases it creates a very image-conscious, transitory world where everything is based on, you know, what you see, you know, and not what's inside.
And that is so true. You mentioned, hello, airbrush. Girls, when you're looking at those teen magazines. I mean, it's impossible to look that perfect. And young ladies have to know that and understand that.
That's so true. And that image is not everything.
Right.
What readers are you hoping to reach with this book?
Well, it really is a message for anybody. I mean, you don't have to be somebody who's aspiring to Hollywood fame and stardom. It's really about this contrast between power and dignity and what you're willing to give up to get the power that you crave. You know, what price does it come at, and where are you willing to make sacrifices, and where do you draw the line? And that's the real message of the story. It's you know, the kind of the cover and the glitz and the glam of the story is about this Hollywood movie star on her way up, but the real essence of it is about the conflict between power and dignity. So.
You live here in Colorado, you're writing about Hollywood, but you have a very active, outdoorsy type lifestyle. Does that affect your writing at all?
Yeah, I mean, there's a similar rhythm and pacing and flow that you get when you're running and when you're outside and hiking and everything else, and it's almost meditative. And once you get into that kind of rhythm, it's very similar when you're writing a chapter from a book or you're writing a scene with certain characters. It almost gets to the point where you become a conduit between what the characters are saying and the printed page. And, you know, any kind of running or outdoor activity can get the same way when you've been, you know, running 5 or 6 miles in the foothills, or, you know, you're hiking along the Front Range and you really get into a flow. It has the same sort of dynamic to it.
Right.
Now, I know you've lived in Boston, Chicago, San Francisco, and you make your home here in Colorado, not in Hollywood.
Yeah, this is home. It took me a while to find it, but I found it finally. Yeah, I think really the inspiration for the story came from my experience in the advertising business, and that's like essentially a dual version of Hollywood. It's, you know, has a lot of the pitfalls and a lot of the appearances that you find in Hollywood, you'll find in the ad business, and that's what gave me the inspiration for the story. And after living in Chicago for 5 years, you know, it was the perfect setting for the small town values that this character is raised with. And the reason I chose Wisconsin as her home state is because my stepmom was a Wisconsin Badger, and that was in my head when I was writing it. Wisconsin, that'll work.
So if you want to find out more about John, read the book. No, actually, thank you so much for coming. And in closing, I just want to say I hope all of our young viewers take the message that you're trying to deliver with this book.
Yeah, I just wanted to tell the viewers that I'm going to be at Borders in Lakewood on Saturday at Colorado Mills doing a signing at noon, and then on Sunday I'm going to be at the Littleton Borders at noon in Southwest Plaza. And if people want to find out more at the about the book, they can go to girlinthemirrornovel.com.
We got it for you.
We're going to recap that right now for you. John Parisi will be signing books this Saturday, February 25th at noon at the Borders Bookstore at Colorado Mills in Lakewood. For details, just go online to girlinthemirrornovel.com. And we have some autographed copies of the book to give away. Just go to coloradoandco.com and name one of the guests on tomorrow's show. Email the answer to coco@9news.com, and please include your address so we can send you a book if you win.